As a result of his new freedom, Chief Superintendent John Toms says he'll fine-tune the location of officers according to crime trends and seasonal influences. Beat police will be provided to areas of greatest need, but he can't guarantee Tukli will be included.
At this stage, I'm still doing my research, and to try and give any assurances would be totally incorrect by myself.
Politicians and residents' action groups have long campaigned for beat police at Tukli and Woy Woy. Member for Pete's Tony Doyle says the incidence of crime and the high population growth in his electorate clearly warrants the additional officers. He's also condemned the relocation of more than 20 Coast Highway Patrol police, saying the move will stretch the already limited resources.
There have long been campaigns to have more police officers appointed to Woy Woy, and yet via this ill-advised decision we lose officers. Now there can't be a halving in effect of your highway patrol strength without major adverse consequences for the local community.
Chief Superintendent Toms has defended his decision, claiming that transfers are the best way to deal with individual policing needs with the available manpower. Jenny Crouch, NBN News.
Right down to the Jess, can you just come down here?
Things can be achieved, and I'm just hoping that this trend continues, because it's just...
And then you can always say...
Organisers claim it's the fastest growing equine sport in the country, and it's easy to see why. The competition is fast and hard. Riders use their mounts as obstacles to block opponents as they try to gather the ball in and throw it through the goals. Occasionally a rider can come off second best, a wayward swing prompting a few stitches. The big crowd pleasers for the weekend though with the junior grades.
Crowd just love the kids playing, you know, they're so good, the play's so clean and they're so skillful.
And despite the Bunnan team in the brown shirts showing plenty of style in the under-16s, Merriwell stormed home winning 10-7. In the main event, the Kirkwood Cup, Maitland defeated Dunedoo 17-10. Adam Muir set the train in motion and things were looking pretty healthy for the Knights, 18-4 at half-time. When Craig O'Dwyer was marched for a trip on Godden, the Roosters looked plucked. However, replacement Colin Ward simply barged through the Knights forwards. Brendan Hall continued the Lazarus-like comeback. Gary Freeman put the icing on the cake for his home crowd. Late in the game, the Roosters also lost Mark Barnes for a high shot on Robbie O'Davis, but East were feeling no pain. Another win against the odds. Livingston Bramble is a former WBA lightweight champion. He won his title when he was 4-1 underdog against Ray Mancini. Bramble likes to chase his opponents around the ring, and when he lands a punch, it generally counts.
You look at the face of Mancini, he looks like he's gone through a meat grinder. There is not a mark on Bramble's face. And
Although he won his biggest title 6 years ago, his minders say he can still finish this strongly and wants to do the same to Kostya. And when Bramble wins, the whole of Trinidad celebrates. Costa arrives in Newcastle early next month. Promoters say he loves fighting at the Newcastle Entertainment Centre and is itching to get on August 23rd.
24-year-old Mark McDonald says he's well suited to his job.
I'm a qualified kitchen hand, chef assistant, room attendant, maitre d', waiter, and also I do a cleaning course.
Although intellectually disabled, Mark's boss says he's been a valued employee at Maitland's Sizzler restaurant for the past 3 years.
He's paved the way for a lot of other people to get a lot of opportunities, but the difference is that he puts a spark in everyone's day, and people appreciate him for his position in the company.
Mark suffered head injuries in a car accident when he was 11. Workmate 20-year-old Rebecca is profoundly deaf. Under a special employment program and with federal government support, Sizzler has adopted the disabled training scheme in its 80 stores across the country.
In Australia at the moment, 1 in 10 people either are related to or have some involvement with someone with a disability. So naturally 1 in 10 of our customers are aware of how important it is and the frustration of people with disability trying to find a job.
I'm good at what I do, I know what I'm doing and I can do it.
Something you do better, stay at home.
Sizzler's target is to employ hundreds of disabled workers and hopes other businesses will follow its example. For Mark and Rebecca, they've also found romance, but plan not to mix business with pleasure.
Work's work and play's play. Very simple.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
Not to argue or put up any sort of resistance, especially with armed offenders. It's better off to hand the money over and hopefully we'll get them later.
The meeting was sponsored by employment and training organisation Skillshare. The government-funded body had invited 200 employers from as far away as Taree and Mudgee to be their guests. Apart from the added attraction of punting on the horses, the ultimate aim was to enlighten employers to the variety of programs and services Skillshare provides. But at 3 o'clock, there was only one thing on everyone's mind: the Mayfield Skillshare handicap run over 1,200 metres. Number 6 Short Crust got home first, ridden by Robert Thompson and trained by his father, Arthur. And a prize of a different kind for the victorious jockey, Thompson's efforts winning him his own weight in Champagne. Then it was on to the second leg of the extra double, race 7, the Skillshare handicap. One, 8 and 3, the Quinella paid 66.60, the trifecta 626.70.
It goes hand in hand, success on the court and good management. The Falcons' deal with Foster's wasn't due to expire until the end of next year, but the Brewer jumped in early to tie the club to a new 3-year deal. It wasn't that long ago and nobody in the corporate world wanted to know the basketballers.
In 1991, it was highly likely that we wouldn't continue, and we were facing fairly dire straits at that time.
No one will talk figures, but the deal is rumoured to be quite substantial. One Falcon who came back to earth today is Terry Dozier. Last Sunday he won the most valuable player in the All-Stars game against the Boomers.
It was great fun. It was rewarding for my pocket as well, because I came home with some money as well.
On the dunk he was looking for.
The Big M may be one of the world's most famous trademarks, but these Bar Beach residents don't want the Golden Arches in their suburb. About 120 people packed into Newcastle City Hall last night to protest a McDonald's outlet planned for this site at the intersection of Derby Street and Glebe Road.
They would bring people to the area at hours which currently allow us to enjoy the residential aspect of the area. And basically it's a commercial development in what is essentially a residential area.
While Newcastle councillors aren't voting on the proposal for another 3 weeks, it's expected they'll be recommended by officers to reject it.
We have the power to approve another non-conforming use as long as it's of a lesser impact than the one that's there now. And the McDonald's simply cannot show that.
No one from McDonald's attended last night's meeting, nor was anyone available for comment today about what the company now plan to do. But the Lord Mayor is hopeful there will be more discussions between council and the fast food giant.
We'll be keen to help them establish another facility in Newcastle on an appropriate site.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
The sculpture of marble and steel is the work of Japanese-born artist Akio Makigawa. Now living in Melbourne, he's acknowledged as one of Australia's leading sculptors.
The cunning use of material, the stainless steel with the marble, for example, is, I think, an unusual combination, but it works here so brilliantly, I think. This is a really major piece, and which we haven't had for a long time.
Beacon 1 is a $19,000 purchase made possible through Port Waratah Coal Services sponsorship, enabling members of the public free entry to the gallery.
That is of little effect if the gallery doesn't have materials and objects of the right quality.
PWCS says the latest acquisition reflects that quality while representing the ties between two cultures.
It's a pretty good indication of the merging of cultures that merge in other ways through our trade with Japan through the Port of Newcastle.
Mark Sargent may have had very little time on the paddock recently, but last week against East, he showed he hasn't lost the hunger. An ankle injury that originally was due to have healed in 4 weeks took 12, sidelining him for the crucial part of the season. This week's game against West won't make any difference to the final 5, but Sargent says it will still be important.
We've obviously got to start thinking about our chances for next year and using what's left of this season to sort of finish on a positive note so we can get off on the right foot next year.
All eyes for the Knights will be on reserve grade though. So far they are equal competition leaders and most of the club's resources are being directed to make sure they take a premiership.
I think it's a credit to the blokes that have sort of been there all along, and especially to Robert Finch. I mean, Finchie's sort of been a fairly successful coach at the club, and he's obviously got something going for him in that regard, that he's been able to keep him on track.
All 3 grades will play at Campbelltown Sports Ground on Sunday. Grant Kruger is an important part in making sure the Falcons' position is cemented. Unlike most of the other players who are now fully professional, Kruger heads off to his
like so much this year. I've lost something like 15 kilos from the beginning of the year, and I think I've toned up a lot too, and it's just been a lot through this and a lot.
And being physical is what Kruger's game is all about. Every week his up-front style gets him in trouble with the umpires or an opposing crowd.
I just like playing tough basketball, that's all. I'm just out on the court, like playing physically. But sometimes they take it the wrong way and think I'm playing dirty, but I'm not real.
And the realisation of a basketball dream this week with 18-year-old Toronto youngster Darren Winterbein signing with the Falcons. It's what Winterbein has wanted all his life, to play with the Falcons, but he says his goals aren't realised yet.
Yeah, just go in there and get some NBL minutes and then hopefully one day represent Australia at the Olympics.
Winterbein has an outside chance to get on court this season, but he's an almost certainty for next year. Darren Curtis, NBN News. After last week's demolition of West, Curry officials hope the crowds come again to set up a vocal hurdle for the Scorpions. Toronto need to win at least one of their next 2 games to firm up 5th spot. Curry agree that's motivation for the opposition, but they have a better cause.
The crowd support definitely does help, and there's a lot of people in Curry who want us to win because they haven't had a successful year since 1982. They haven't won a grand final since 47, I think. And there's a lot of people up there expecting us to do well, and hopefully we won't disappoint them.
Just 2 games tomorrow. The home teams are in yellow. On Sunday, the rest of the round will be completed. In rugby union, University want to keep their barnstorming run going tomorrow against Waratah. And tomorrow in the NBN Soccer League, only 1 game. Some big scores expected again this week in the lead up to the finals. And the Adamstown Rosebuds play one of their last home games for the year on Sunday.
Deciding which university, TAFE or college course, apprenticeship or career will best suit them is one of the most important decisions these young adults will ever make. Experts say in a difficult job market, further education is a must for the majority of students who have a chance of being accepted. But the decision about where to go and what to do is difficult. Today, students from 14 high schools from Foster to Kempsey attended the information day to at least make that choice a more informed one.
It is an important decision and it's a critical decision. There's so many courses on offer, they all have entry requirements, and there's huge competition for each of these courses. So students have to do a lot of research.
Most students from the Mid-North Coast who consider further education must confront the daunting task of moving to another city or even interstate. With scores of institutions and hundreds of courses to choose from, many feel overwhelmed by the decision. While pamphlets and handbooks can help, personal representatives from the institutions are able to fully explain prerequisites and entry. They give advice on accommodation and living allowances.
By information gathering and comparison of courses at different institutions, they can compare the different types of courses they've been looking at and compare the same type of course at different institutions to see which one actually suits them and interests them the most.
For an hour and a quarter, Steve Peters was lying motionless in the pouring rain at Beach Street Oval. Shortly after the start of the second half, he was injured in this tackle and failed to get back up. When Peters told team officials he couldn't move, the doctor decided to take all precautions and the Westpac rescue helicopter was called in to airlift him to a Newcastle hospital. After a series of tests and x-rays, he was kept in overnight. Early this morning, he was allowed to go home and is believed to be up and walking. It's unclear at this stage if he will play again this season, but doctors believe he did not sustain any serious injury. After Peters left the field, league officials decided to abandon the game due to the long delay and atrocious conditions, giving Foster Tuncurry the win. The writing was already on the wall though. Foster Tuncurry had run in 6 tries to put an unbridgeable gap between the teams. The loss put an end to Taree United's role as giant killer over the last couple of weeks, shattering any hopes of a semi-final berth next weekend. Final score was 34-6. Despite the drama, the match will go down in Group 3 history as the first game in which a father and son played alongside one another. Coach and halfback Tony Clifton and son Matt took to the field in their first family game. Next weekend, Foster Tuncurry will take on Wingham in the minor semi-final.
Five of the state's keenest chefs pitted themselves against each other in the final, cooking up a storm using anything but meat, seafood or chicken. Craig's winning entry was a leek and oatmeal Projaski steak, garnished with a vanilla-flavoured carrot sauce and a bouquet of herbs.
We're a healthy eats restaurant, so that helped me with the guidelines of how much butter to use and to keep it strictly vegetarian and easy to present for a restaurant.
The judges, coming from TAFE, dietary, fruit and veggie and the media fields, were impressed. The dish rated the most pleasing to eye and palate and fitting all of the competition's stringent criteria. No mean feat when most people regard veggies as being an accompaniment to a main ingredient and fruit as something to have afterwards.
Yeah, they've actually sat down and created something really different. They've actually incorporated fruits and vegetables both into savoury dishes to sit down to suit all sorts of appetite.
Craig's next big test is the national final, held in conjunction with the Australian Fresh Fruit and Vegetable Industry's annual conference in Perth late August and early September.
"29-year-old Paul Anthony Richardson has been in protective custody for the past 2 months since he was charged with the abduction, sexual assault and murder of Sandra Millwood. Police allege Mrs Millwood was bound and gagged in front of her 2 young children and dragged from their home. Her body was found the next day. An angry mob gathered for Richardson's first court appearance at Curry. Today the case was moved to Cessnock for security reasons. However, the community hadn't forgotten and seems unlikely to forgive over the death of a respected and popular young woman. A number of benefit functions have been organised to help with the care of Sandra Millwood's children, aged 6 and 7.
It's just raising money for the children's education. It just goes to show the feelings that they had for Sandra. She was really respected in the town, and the whole community's been really grand.
Paul Richardson entered no plea, but he has engaged the services of a Queen's Counsel in his defence. The court was told that 39 witnesses for a hearing. A preliminary committal hearing will begin at Cessnock on the 9th of November, and as Paul Richardson was led away, the friends and relatives of Sandra Millwood braced themselves for the judicial process ahead. Sandra's mother-in-law, Edna Millwood, hopes to shield her grandchildren, who she says have suffered too much already.
They're bearing up all right, but it's still there in their little memories. They're finding it, I think they're finding it a bit hard without their mum.
The English have traditionally been valuable tourists for the hunter. They stay here longer than any other overseas visitors, on average 13 nights, and they spend about $50 a day, the second largest amount after Scandinavian tourists. Even so, plans are underway to entice more of them to holiday in the hunter.
Most travel agents in the UK just literally do not have any localised knowledge of Australia whatsoever.
English-based travel guide publisher John Mallion says tourists want detailed information about hotels, car rentals, maps and of course local attractions. Instead of waiting until they arrive down under, they want the information before they get here. Roundabout Travel Guides wants local tourist operators to advertise in a locally produced magazine which would be distributed in Britain. They also hope to get an endorsement from the State Tourism Authority and local council.
Pleased to give it. It's something that we're being the first region in Australia to have this enormous exposure in the travel agencies of Great Britain. It's a marvellous opportunity for us.
Making the tackle, Robbie McCormick.
To see the Seagulls remain on 6 points.
Happy to give a couple of penalties so we can get a bit of a breather.
Breakers executives could have been excused for thinking it was Christmas today, faced with a $2 million debt and thought of having to withdraw from the National League after only 2 years of competition. BHP, the Breakers sponsor for the last 3 years, today announced a further 1-year sponsorship worth in excess of $100,000. But why should the big Australian bother?
Soccer has a big following in this region. There are 8,000 senior players and 27,000 junior players, and a lot of our workforce is involved with the Breakers.
Breakers chairman Alan Wennon sees today's announcement as a vote of faith in the club's new board. He says it means the board can get on with the business of running the club, adding BHP's backing will entice other sponsors to come forward. Good news too for the club's newly appointed general manager Neil Fletcher, only on the job for a week. BHP's support also makes coach Jim Foley a very happy man, giving him solid foundations during player negotiations which are still underway. Foley hopes to re-sign Ralph Mayer, Rod Brown and captain Darren Stewart, plus add former Australian striker David Lowe.
The South Stain hosted today's visit by Senator Bishop. She was in the city to address a Newcastle Chamber of Commerce luncheon which attracted a crowd of 210 people, keen to hear the Liberals' new leading light, but the question of leadership wasn't on the agenda. Instead, her address focused on a revamp of the tax system to promote savings rather than encouraging overseas borrowings by business.
To look at having policies that in fact reward people for saving rather than penalise them.
Senator Bishop went on to rebuff the Keating government's current approach to our jobless.
The only way we are going to see more employment and to start to see a reduction in the long-term unemployed is if we start to see new employers come into the marketplace and not just potential employees.
Facing questions from the floor, Bronwyn Bishop conceded the coalition will have to make its policies simpler to understand for the next federal election.
6-year-old Kirsten Friend was dragged out of a bathtub, wrapped in a towel and rushed from the family home by her big sister as flames engulfed the kitchen.
She was tough. She didn't cry or anything, and I was the one doing it for both of us. Like, she was just standing there thinking it was a party, and it wasn't.
Kirsty, what do you think about your big sister today?
He's good.
The fire started on the stove and spread quickly. 16-year-old Megan Friend breathed in smoke and heat as she got her little sister out and managed to ring 000. The girl's parents, arriving home from work last night, found fire engines outside their house. Megan was treated for smoke inhalation and allowed leave hospital this morning. The family started cleaning up what had been a newly renovated home. The new carpet went down last Thursday. Kevin finished painting last weekend.
We're just very thankful to everybody.
Yeah, especially the police, the fire brigade and the three neighbours that actually tried breaking into the house to fight the fire. We'd really like to thank you. You know, that's all we can say.
You must be pretty proud of your daughters too.
As the 30th of July was set on the Sandgate Post Office date stamp today, it signalled the passing into history of the 70-year-old establishment. Husband and wife team Colin and June Keith have run the agency for 33 years. This morning they received their final mail delivery from Australia Post. The couple, surrounded by customers and friends, who came in for a cuppa to say farewell and thank them for the years of service. For Colin Keith, the people and the stars are amongst his fondest memories of Sandgate PO.
Getting to know them and being part of the community, it's and there's been a lot of highlights in the place. You know, we had Johnny O'Keefe in the old days, and Val Taylor, and 2 or 3 other people that I just can't bring to mind over the years when they've been passing through.
While the customers were saying thanks today, June Keith was keen to return the compliment.
I'd just like to thank all my friends and all the business people for the participation in coming in here and all the business that they've given us over the years.
Sandgate was amongst 7 agencies between Dudley and Abermain to stop trading today, most agents resigning their position as Australia Post restructures its agency operations in a move toward a retail footing.
The tasteful surrounds of the Pelican Beach Resort was the setting for the gala event. Amongst the crowd, some famous faces, including NBN's very own Ray Deneen. Some VIPs, such as politician John Howard, were lucky they weren't in attendance, being sent up for the amusement of the audience. The feature event of the carnival is the Coffs Harbour Cup. That's being held on Thursday.